folks, my name is Janaki, and this is Madame Bathsheba. And together we are Catomancy Tarot. So today I have another crafting video for you guys. And so today I am going to show you guys how I make silk pouches for a lot of my tarot decks. So over the years, I've made quite a few of these, and I make them in all kind of different custom sizes and shapes based on the deck I'm working with. And I really like making my own pouches. First of all, because I need a lot of them. It's a nice skill to kind of like be able to know how to kind of make your own, so you don't have to I mean, there's a million beautiful pouches out there which are fun to buy, but it's a little bit more kind of sustainable for me to kind of make my own. And this way I can really kind of like pick materials that I really enjoy, and it's kind of nice to kind of you know, have some kind of like cohesion across you know, across your decks, and visually I think it's kind of nice to have you know, have figured out a style of pouch that works and kind of to stick with it. I like to use pouches for a number of reasons. First of all, sometimes decks come in like big clunky boxes, and it's a really big barrier for me to actually like get them out of the big box just for the deck and every time I want to use it. And so a lot of times I'll go ahead and I'll make a pouch if I have a deck like that, or if there's a deck that I really want to travel with, then I'll go ahead and make a pouch. Or sometimes my decks come used and like don't come with a box. Like this one didn't come with a box, so I had to make it its own pouch. So there's a few decks that I've gotten over the past month or so that need bags, and I thought, well, I'll take you along and I'll show you my process of how I make all of these bags, and kind of yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a tutorial to the best I can. It'll probably be filmed over a couple days, but I'll go ahead and I'll show you my process. So again, here are some of my pouches, and you can see that they come, I make them in a bunch of different shapes and sizes depending on the deck dimension, but I just find, and then I use kind of some embroidery floss to kind of match the pouch I create, and I think it's just a lovely way to store decks. I think they look really pretty on my shelves. There's like stackable, you can kind of, and then the fabric allows me to kind of like remember what's in the deck. There's always kind of a relationship between the fabric for me and what's on the inside. So like for this one, it's a gold pouch because inside is my golden rider. So that way I can, it helps me kind of like, sometimes if you have a lot of pouches, it's kind of hard to remember who's who, but for me, I pick the fabric choices like very intentionally. This one is for my spolia. I didn't like opening the tuck box every time because it was getting really worn out, and I wanted to kind of save the box. So that's why I went ahead and made this pouch, and kind of the purple reminds me of the purple of the backs. This one is my Kazanlar. And I thought that the fabric just kind of matched really well with the backs of the cards. So yeah, you can see kind of, I think it's a really fun way to kind of like, yeah, have a relationship with the pouch, which is kind of part of it for me. And I make them in lots of different sizes, so I have like down to the tiny poker size up to the like big old oracle size, and so I'll show you how I go about making them. And yeah, sometimes some of the fabric I use, like all of these things used to be garments that I used to wear. you know, these guys were tops. This was actually like a headscarf. And so I find that it's also really kind of fun to use materials of maybe garments that you have a relationship with, or that maybe no longer fit, but that this way you can kind of use recycled materials and kind of upcycle them, and then you have an even kind of more personal relationship with the fabric. Like this top, was one of my favorite tops, but I just outgrew it and I didn't fit it anymore. It made me really sad, but now I have a way to kind of like you know, still have it around, and I really like that. And so it's like, you know, looking in your closet, seeing what's about. And I tend to like using recycled materials. And what I usually do is I buy what are known as fat quarters of recycled silk. And these are usually from silk saris. You can find fat quarters on sites like eBay or Etsy, or sometimes I have, like this is a scarf that I've had since like high school, and I'm waiting for the right deck to come along for it to turn into a bag. And so, yeah, I've got this kind of stack of materials. Sometimes I got this piece from a dear friend of mine who's a textile artist in Detroit, and she uses a lot of silk in her work, and sometimes I'm lucky enough to get some of her scraps. And so like this is a pouch that I made from a scrap that came from her, so it's another way that you know, relationships through fabric and stuff like that. So I've got this stack of fabric here, and I've also got this stack of decks over here that need homes. So I figure our first step will probably be to kind of match the deck with the fabric. So the first deck I have that needs a bag is this. I showed it in one of my recent videos. It's a Russian deck. I think it's called the Magical Tarot, or the Magical Tarot of Fate. And it's got this like terrible box. There's no closure, it's just cardboard. It flaps open, and then the box has this weird insert. It's just all kinds of messy, and I had to use the bow to keep it shut. So it's just not a practical box, which means it needs a pouch. And this is a very fantastical, high fantasy, high science fiction, very colorful, very it's a whole vibe. This deck is a whole vibe, and I think it needs an equally colorful pouch. These are the backs, and it's a little bit short and squat. So this is one that this is a pouch that I know I'll probably have to kind of like custom make, because the dimensions of this deck might be so particular. Actually, it might fit in this pouch, so that's another thing that I do, is like I'll go back and see if any of my decks are the same sizes, so I can just use the same dimensions. So this is a similar thickness, and is just a little bit shorter than my modified Enchanted Tarot, which means I can probably use this pouch as a guide. And I do like, it would probably go in this bag, actually. But this bag already belongs to somebody. So that won't be happening. But I'm actually thinking that I'm really enjoying the way it looks with this like top magenta number. What do you guys think? I think that might be the one. So we've got the blue backs, and then it has a lot of these kind of like fuchsia, lime green, blue moments. Yeah, see, I think that's a really good fit. And this is a bag, or this is a piece of fabric with unusual dimensions. So I think I'll be able to, this will probably work better for a smaller pouch rather than a larger one, because it's not that, I don't have a lot of space to work with. And if we wrap it up here, you can tell like this will be just enough fabric going that way. So I think this is going to be our perfect match. So we've made our first match. Match made. All right, next one. So the next deck that needs a home is this one. And this came in this bag. This is called the, let me show you the little booklet. It didn't come in a box. It just came with this booklet. It's the Graven Images Oracle. And it came in this like very cheaply made like velvet. It's not velvet. It's like, it's got this lining. It's crinkly. It doesn't feel very nice. I also have a cat, so black velvet is a nightmare. So it needs a new bag. This is what the backs look like. All of the images are of graveyard photography, and it's really quite beautiful. So you've got a lot of like forests and trees. Yeah, so let's see. There's this green. It looks nice with the green. Like when there's, you know, when you've got some like flora and fauna, that might be a nice touch. But I feel like I'm saving this. I really like this piece of material. So let's see what else we've got. So we've also got this teal. I don't think it's teal. I'm really curious. I think this might be the one I want to use. It's kind of silver and black. I think it's a little bit funky, but I think the coloration is right, because there's this deck is mostly kind of, I mean, it's all headstones, so there's a lot of gray and black in this deck. So I think, I feel like this is a fun fabric to use for a cemetery deck. I think, I don't know what other deck I have that's going to have so much sort of silver in it. And I did kind of, when you buy this deck, it comes really raggedy on the sides. So I had to kind of like trim it to even it out. And then I went ahead and just like edged it in this kind of dark silvery color. So I think this is our match. I think this is the pairing. And then we've got another deck that I've actually, sometimes what I'll do is I'll make a pouch. Like I made this pouch and it's beautiful and I love it. And I think it's a better home for this deck than its original one. This is, let me show you the box it came in. So this is the box it came in. El Tarot. It's a Marseille deck, and it has this big clunky blue box. I will never use this. The guidebook is in Spanish. If anyone wants a free Marseille guidebook in Spanish, if you just, you know, pay postage, I'll send this to you, because I won't use it. And so instead of getting out this clunky box every time, it needs a pouch. But this deck has a lot of like really bright springtimey colors. And I think it's actually a perfect match for this pouch here. It has a lot of those like bright blues and pinks. I wish I had a hot pink. I don't have any hot pink silk, because that would be perfect. But what I might do is just like change out one of these for like a hot pink, and then that will be the pouch. And the original deck that was in this bag is another Spanish mass market deck, and that's this deck, which is the I think it's just called the Egyptian Tarot in Spanish, and it's got a lot of these like dusky pinks and teals, and I think that's why I reached for this teal colored bag. But I think in this latest batch of material I got a fabric that I think might be a better fit for it. And let's see if I can dig it out. So I think the fabric that would work best, so I've got some purples. This red, I love. This is like my favorite piece of fabric, and it's gonna be something special. I might make a pouch for the ritual tarot from this, because right now it's in a black velvet bag, but I don't love velvet pouches, so that might be a thing. But I'm not gonna do that one today, I don't think. We've got this, some teal, some more purple. Now this checkered bright pink could be a good match for this one as well. I like the pink checkers, but I don't love this squiggly bit, so I'm not sure about this piece of fabric. Sometimes I order just a grab bag and then you get pieces like this, which I don't love as much, but I'll have to figure out what to do with. There's this one, which is really nice, but I think this dusky pink color would be perfect for this Egyptian tarot. What do you guys think? And it has this like border as well, and a lot of times I like to line the borders up like this one, where the border is kind of at the bottom, so you have like a base of the bag. And I think that might be a really fun to do with the Egyptian tarot. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to rehome this bag in this pouch and make a new pouch for this deck. And these decks are a little bit different dimensions, which means I might just shorten this bag a little bit, which will be really quick and easy to do, and then make this bag in the same dimensions as this one was. So that's the agenda for the day. There's one more deck that I haven't decided if I'm going to make a pouch for or not. And it literally just arrived in the mail. And it was a deck that my mother spontaneously decided I needed an oracle deck, and so I said this was one that I've been wanting for a while, and it's the Janaki Oracle, and it comes in this nice box, but the box is just a little bit bigger than I like a tarot box to be. It won't fit nicely on my shelf, but it has this really great big thick guidebook, which could go on my bookshelf, and then it has a round deck. And I've never made a pouch for a round deck before, but I think I might be up for the challenge. So we'll see if we'll see how ambitious I am, or if it's okay to live in its box for now. But if I did make it, this is part of my process. If I did make a pouch, I probably would go for, I think, this one. What do you guys think? This feels like a perfect match for this deck's energy, which is very ecological, a little bit abstract. You know what? Now that I'm looking at the have it out and I'm looking at it, I think it does need to be in this pouch. Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do it. Okay, challenge accepted. So we'll figure out how to make a pouch for a round deck, which is a new challenge. All right. So I'll be right back after I've got things set up for the next step. And the next step is going to be cutting the material. I will say since I'm using silk, in order to use silk pouches and kind of give them some structure, I always use a lining, and sometimes I'll use a white lining, and sometimes I'll use a black lining depending on the opacity of the silk I'm working with. Sometimes it looks nicer with white behind it, and sometimes it looks better with black. And so I'm just using like a cotton broadcloth, something that's very cheap, very affordable, but will help give the pouches a little bit of structure. And then all of my pouches, or I've got this one empty, all of my pouches are also lined on the inside, so it's folded over. So there's actually 4 layers of material here. So you've got the 2 ends of the silk and the broadcloth that's sandwiched in it. So my pouches, even though they're made of silk, they're actually quite durable, and there's a lot of structure to them, which help keep the deck safe and help, the longevity of the pouch. So I'll go ahead and get set up here, and the next step is going to be cutting out the material and measuring the material. Okay friends, so I'm going to use this deck as my main example for this tutorial because it is a standard tarot size and I can give you the dimensions. The other decks I'm making pouches with, I'll show you how I'm making pouches for those, and I'll give you the dimensions, but I thought this would be the most useful to the most number of people because it is a standard tarot size. It's the same size as a US Games tarot pack. So since I've made pouches for this kind of deck before, I'm going to use the pouch I made for the Golden Rider as a template. So I went ahead and I measured with my measuring tape, and so we will need to cut out 2 different rectangles of fabric, and the dimensions you'll need to do are 9 inches by 15.5 inches. So that's going to be the rectangle we start with, and you'll see it we fold it over twice. So we fold it bookways, and then we also fold it long ways, so the fold is at the top. So we're going to start out by cutting out those 2 big rectangles. So the first step, and this is an example where you can kind of see what I'm talking about with the, I have these 2 different, I have a black and a white liner, and depending on the opacity of the silk I'm working with, I might choose one over the other. And it's a subtle difference, but you can kind of see here that with the black, it's a little bit darker, and the color of the silver is a little bit lighter with the white lining. So it's a subtle difference, but you can notice. But I'm thinking I'm going to go with the black, so it's a little bit darker, a little bit grayer, since that's kind of the vibe of this deck. So with that choice made, we'll go ahead and we'll cut out our piece of cloth for the liner. And as I mentioned, I'm using just like a generic cotton broadcloth, and you can see I've made other incisions already. So let's see here. Find an end to start with. And then we take our tape measure, and let's see if this piece is going to be wide enough. So this piece will be wide enough. So it's already more than 9 inches across, so I'm going to need about 15.5 inches, and it's not a completely, I'm also a, I'm not a perfectionist when it comes to measuring. As long as I've made the mistake of giving myself not enough seam allowance, one too many times, and then you get a pouch that fits a little bit too tightly, and that's not great. So we're gonna mark off actually about 15.5. And the nice thing about cotton broadcloth is that it you can make an incision and then rip the rest off. So you'll see one of the corners here isn't a right angle, and it's a little bit wider than we need it to be. So we'll just trim that extra off. So we'll fold it over because I know one of my edges is straight and the other is not, and we'll use this finished edge. There's technical terms for all of this stuff, but I don't remember it all. I used to do costumes, so that's where I got a little bit of a sewing background from. So we can see that we want it to be about 4.5 inches with a little bit of extra for our seam allowance there. So that's about where we want it. Let's make sure it's the same over on this side. Yeah, I'm not used to filming myself doing this process, so I'll try my best to explain what I'm doing, but sometimes yeah, we're just cutting out this piece of fabric here, and we're doing a approximate job rather than an exact job. So that's about the size I need, and so we'll go ahead and cut this piece out. And you will want a nice pair of scissors. I've ruined my costume teacher from high school would be ashamed to know that I've ruined my best pair of fabric shears by using it to cut sticky things, and that's terrible. You shouldn't do that. So now we've got this nice piece of cloth, and this is our liner, and so now I need to cut this same size out of the silk. And so with this pattern, it's all kind of funky, so I'm not too concerned about which which direction the cloth needs to go. I mean, this cloth does have a black band on the bottom, so actually it might be nice to have that be the bottom of the bag, which is why I like to check to make sure. So what we're gonna do is one way to do this, which is usually my preferred way, is to kind of like go ahead and lay out your silk, because silk can be like quite finicky, like it moves around a lot, and sometimes I'll just go ahead and pin this cloth to the silk, and then use that as a template, so that way I know that my fabric isn't moving around too much while I cut it. So we'll just go ahead and start with our corner over here, and I'm just it doesn't have to be super exact at this point. I'm just pinning it down so that the silk doesn't move too much when I do cut it. So we'll line this edge up over here. And silk, I've found, is a little bit of it's a harder material to work with, but one of the reasons I like using silk is I don't put a lot of stock in kind of these older like tarot superstition sort of things, but they are kind of fun. And one of them is that you should always store your tarot deck in like silk or velvet. I've heard silk is a really good material to keep things in, and so I also just like it as a material, and so yeah, that's one reason to use it. And we'll put one right here as well. That'll make it a little bit easier. And now I've got a cat on top of my material, which makes everything a lot harder. So I'm going to, please leave, please leave, please leave. She's not leaving. She likes it here too much. All right, I made her leave. So once you've got that pinned down as a template, it's good to, when you're cutting fabric, to have it just lie flat on a surface. Otherwise, if you're trying to cut it in the air, you'll never cut a straight line. So once it's lined up, we'll go ahead and cut it out. Yes, the cat is yelling at me. And then we'll go ahead and cut out this line too. I'm going to cut out just a little extra because sometimes silk is a little slidey and it's nice to have a little bit more wiggle room. Alright, so that is our material for the pouch, and the way this is going to work is we're going to fold it over. So now this side is going to be the inside of our pouch. This edge that we have folded over is going to be the lip of the pouch, and then all we're going to do is we're going to sew a seam down this side and a seam down this side for the bottom. Additionally, before we sew it shut, we're going to sew 2 parallel lines going across the top, and that's going to be where our drawstrings go. So that's going to be first step is I'm going to go ahead and iron this, so it's nice to have it all kind of ironed up, and it's also nice to kind of iron your seams, and I find that really helps the silk move around less when you're trying to sew it. So I'm going to go ahead and that'll be the next step for us, but I'll go ahead and cut out the rest of the material for the pouches so I can, cut everything all at once, iron everything all at once, and then sew everything all at once. So next up, I think we're going to use this material, and we're going to use this pouch as our guide. I'll go ahead and measure and cut this one, and I'll go ahead and measure and cut this one as well. I can leave the dimensions for you guys down below, but as I mentioned, these decks are a little bit, the sizes are a little bit different, but one way you can kind of decide how big your pouches are going to be is you can just take a measure, a tape measure, and what you'll do is like you can take your deck, and what you can do is just like measure around it. So with this deck, this total circumference is about 7.5 inches, and then this circumference of the pouch is going to be about 9 inches, so that added about 1.5 inches. So another way you can do that is to take your material, and this is how I figured out the measurements. I didn't start with and you can just like sandwich it, which is a little bit of a janky way to do it. But this is how I figured out all of the sizes, is by kind of trial and error. So once you kind of sandwich it, you want to give it a little bit of space to wiggle. And then on top of that, you want to give it, I would say, at least a quarter, if not a half inch of extra room for seam allowance, because if it's too tight, it's not going to be nice, but you don't want it to be too loose. So I would start by giving yourself a little bit extra, and then as you're sewing it, you can always take it in a little bit as you go. So that's how I measure, but I won't make you guys watch me do all the cutting for the rest of these. I'll go ahead and get the things cut and catch up with you later. Alright, so now I've got all of my pieces cut out, and then I went ahead and I ironed them. So I ironed a crease down over the central fold at the top, and then I folded it again in half, so I have the 2 creases, and that'll help me keep things all lined up. So I have all of my things cut out and ready to go, and we'll go ahead and start with this first one. And so this is the inside of a completed pouch, so you can see what I'm up to. So the first thing I'm going to do is, before I sew it in half, is I need to make these 2 lines of stitching across the top. So I've got my pieces pinned this way, and so I'm going to go ahead and do 2 stitches here, and it depends how much of a little fringe on top you want to do. And then what'll happen is, you'll notice here I've got a little bit of extra silk on one side. There's no lining there, as you can see, just a little bit of extra silk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to fold that on top of my seam. So when I sew down the side, I'm going to sew all of that shut, and that should help me keep, a lot of times you get a lot of this action going on, so by closing the seam over, I should get a little bit of a nicer finish. You don't have to do that step, that's totally optional. But yeah, so let's get going and sew this first seam here. I've got my sewing machine all set up. Hopefully you can see that. All right, the angle is a little bit weird, but that's the best I could do. And so you'll have probably already threaded your machine, and I'm assuming you guys have a little bit of a familiarity of sewing. So we'll take the needle up, and in terms of how far to start off, I always just kind of use the last one as a little bit of a model. So from your needle, maybe about, I'm gonna go up to this kind of 5/8 mark on my machine right here. So I'm gonna kind of line that up. Maybe I'll take it just to the edge of this line for that first one, and go ahead and get started. So you're just sewing 2 parallel lines to start with. Alright, and once you have that first line, that kind of secures the silk in place, so you don't have to worry about it moving on you anymore. And so that is our first seam there. And then we're going to go ahead and sew that second line. Alright, once we've got that first seam down and across, we're just going to go and make a second parallel seam. If you can see right here, we're aiming for about a 1/4 inch or less, and it's just going to be a channel through which you're going to thread your drawstrings. So we can come over here, and now I'm going to line this first line up with the base of my foot, and that should be approximately about as far as you'll go. So I'm just going to line this line that I already put down, align with my foot, and that should be about the distance that we need. So I'll go ahead and sew this one. Alrighty. So as you can see, now we've got that nice little channel, and so all the way across there. And so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and take our piece. I already have the corner, the bottom corner pinned. So all of those layers, there's 8 layers here, so it can be a little bit tricky to kind of line them all up, but you just want to make sure that all of your material is aligned. And that's the hardest part with silk, honestly, is it's slippy and slidey and it wants to go everywhere, and you just have to be patient and not let it move. So that the next step then is, oh, we've got some lots of extra thread, so I'm just going to clean some of this up so you guys can see what I'm doing and so I can see a little bit better. Yeah, we've got all of these threads. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to fold it over our seam, and we'll see if this works. And I'll go ahead and I'll pin it down at the bottom here. And this should help us have just a little bit of a cleaner seam. All right. So now we're going to do 2 more lines of stitching. We're going to go all the way down, and then we're going to just turn and we're going to finish down at the bottom here. So let's go ahead and let's put in the seam. So again, we're going to aim for about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That should be just about right. And you want to get kind of close to the top. And this time we are going to back stitch, because this is going to be the opening of the pouch, so it will have a lot of wear and tear. And then you can go ahead and sew along down. And just as you go along, you gotta just corral the silk a little bit so it stays in place. And it will move on you, so sometimes I move the pins out of the way so you don't get kind of this ruching that happens sometimes. And then once we're kind of down at the corner, we do want to stop, so we give ourselves about a 1/4 inch towards the bottom. So we're getting close here, so maybe just a few more. And then that looks about right, so we'll lift our foot and then we'll do kind of a right angle. And yeah, I think that's about where we want to be. So we'll go ahead, maybe I'll do kind of 1 or 2 more stitches this way. Yeah, that's about where I want to be. And then I'm just going to go across to the end. And then back stitch again. And there you have it. So now we can go ahead and take those pins out. And I'm going to trim the excess off the bottom here. Because I have a few extra layers just at the bottom. And it looks like right at the bottom here, this top layer didn't catch. So I'm just going to go ahead and just tack that down really quick. Sometimes things move around, and that's what happened here. So I'm just going to just do a line of stitching down to the bottom. Alrighty. So that fixed that problem. And now you have this sort of hidden seam. If you're really concerned, you can turn this under again, but I wasn't too bothered. And then what you can also do is at this corner here, so we can get a little bit nicer rounder corners. We're just going to come in here and cut this way, so we have a little bit less material, so we're cutting the corners off. And we'll go ahead and turn this inside out, which is what we want, and this is what our finished bag is looking like. We can kind of come in here and fluff out this corner a little bit more. And so that is that's our pouch. So it's at this stage that I like to actually come in and grab the deck that this pouch is for and slot it in there just to see how we're doing on fit. And it looks like with this one, we're gonna be sitting pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with that. It could be a little bit more snug, but I'm digging that. I think that's gonna work quite well. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this one aside for now, and I'm gonna go ahead and sew up the rest of these pouches, and then at the end I'll go ahead and I'll show you how I put the drawstrings in, but that'll be the last stage. But I'll go ahead and repeat those steps that I just showed you with these other 3 bags, and I will meet back up with you in a moment. So again, you start by just doing 2 parallel lines about 1/4 inch apart across the top, and then you'll just close up the side and then pick up your foot, do a right angle, and close up the bottom. And remember to back stitch at the start and back. And then I just cut off the corners and flip it inside out, and there you have it. Okay, so at this point I realize, so this top stitch that you do across the top, the thread will be visible. And sometimes it doesn't matter, and sometimes I like to try and match my thread to my project. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to wind a full bobbin because I've got a blue bobbin. So I think I might use this thread for this top stitch, and then also this top stitch. I think the blue will work well. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my bobbin in, throw this thread in, and then sew up these 2 bags. So here I am just changing the bobbin a little bit, and as I mentioned, I learned all of these skills back when I did costuming. I did technical theater. Fun fact about me, I did technical theater for about 10 years in middle school, high school, and all of college, and so this feels like a skill set that I used to have a lot more as a kid. We used to have to do like a lot of sewing exercises, and it took me through my paces back then, but hopefully, I know this is a little bit of a long-winded tutorial, but hopefully it'll encourage you that these little projects are very approachable. It's just a couple straight lines on the sewing machine, so try it out if you'd like. And here I am sewing up the last bit here, and there we go. Alrighty friends, it's this next morning and this is how the pouches turned out. I'm really pleased. I think they came out well. Here they all are. And I did manage to make the one for the round deck, and these are the dimensions that worked, and I think it came out really cool. You can see sometimes you can plan patterns, so you get like, I was excited to get this little like chevron thing on the side, or I really like how I got the border on the bottom of these to work out. Yeah, so that was fun. And now the last step is to kind of to do the drawstring. So I like to use embroidery floss. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a allergies, so stuffy throat going on. So this is my big old bag of embroidery floss. I think I found a lot of these at a thrift store, so let's get everybody out. And this is a fun part where we get to play mix and match. It's a little bit of a messy process, but it's a fun one. So, let's see here. So I think for this one, I think we might want to go with a black might be fun, or maybe not. Maybe we want a, I think for this one, we're just going to go with like a black and silver. And I think, yeah, I think that'll be good. So that'll be for this one. So we've picked that one out. Let's see. I think a nice little a dusky pink for this one, maybe along with maybe a dark maroon color might be nice. Let's see. What do we have? What do we have? The deck inside is also gonna have some of these teal colors, so maybe a nice pop of teal would be fun. Let's see. We've got this teal. Maybe these two. That might be cute. And then for this one, I think we want maybe something in a, I think this green might be good. I think it matches the backs pretty closely. And then maybe something in a, more of a blue. Ooh, this color might be good. Maybe these two together. And then let's see, for this one, we do want this kind of poppy bright blue color. So let's see if we can't find that. Here we go. We've got this color. And then what else? What else would be good? Maybe a gold, or maybe I do probably have this same maroon color. Maybe these two, that might be good. All right, and then I think I want to replace one of these colors with a hot pink. And so let me just find a hot pink. Maybe because we're looking for like this color, this kind of punchy pink color. Ooh, yeah, this one. I like that. Okay, perfect. All right. So I'll clean up and then I'll show you the next step. All right, for this next step, you're going to need your pouch, your, I like to use embroidery floss, but you can use other kinds of yarn or string or whatever, and you're gonna need a seam ripper, and then you can use like a safety pin, or I actually ended up like making this little tool, and this is what we're gonna use to kind of thread the floss through our little channel here. So in order to put the drawstring in, you're going to have to make a couple incisions here. And so with your seam ripper, what you're going to do is you're going to come up between these two seams at either end, and you're going to take your seam ripper, dip into the fabric. You're wanting to go in between the two lining layers, so you don't want to have the point stick out all the way through. You just want to go into one or two layers, and it can be a little bit tricky, but you just have to kind of feel it out. And then once you've got you're in between the two layers, you're going to come up with the point of it inside the seam, and you're just going to make a little incision there, like that. So now we've got a little hole where our drawstring is going to go. And then you can come over to this side. And on the side where we have the seam, you're actually going to need to make 2 incisions, one on either side of the seam right here. So again, you'll take the point, stick it down, feel out between kind of those 2 middle layers, and then you're going to want to come up again on the inside of that seam, and then make the little incision. And so there we've got another one of our holes, and we'll do that one more time right on this other side of the seam. Yeah, there we go. All right, now that we have our little incisions, the next step is to measure out our embroidery floss. So for this one, I'm going to use black and silver because I think that goes nicely. And again, I'll take a look at this kind of model so I can tell you about how much thread you're going to want. So let's see here. And it's kind of up to you how much extra you want, but it looks like about maybe about 16 inches long, give or take. I also just like to do one of these. And then we've got our scissors here, so we'll cut that off here. And then we'll do, you're going to need 2 lengths of these. And I like to use 2 strands. That way you get a little bit of color contrast. Things pop a little bit. Alright, now that you've got your 2 lengths, you're going to take one of them, and you're going to take, you can use a safety pin, you can use like a needle. I ended up just making this little tool out of wire, and you'll go ahead and thread your embroidery floss through, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take this and guide it through your pouch. So I'm going to start over at this end and go into this little slit here, and then what you're going to do, you're going to push that through, and you're just going to kind of shuffle along, guiding that thread through. And then once you get to this seam over here, you're going to kind of guide that out and then dip back in to this other aperture and keep on guiding it through. But you want to make sure you are getting between the correct layers. Otherwise your threads are going to get tangled. So that is the tricky piece of this. And we're shuffling along, shuffling along. And then once we get to the other side, we kind of meet back up. And then you kind of try and gently guide it out. There we are. And then you'll guide this through. And there we are. So now you've got one end threaded through. And I'll take this and I'll line up the two ends here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a little bit of a double knot at the end. So I go around my finger a couple times, do a nice little knot at the end. And there you have it. That's one end of the pouch. And once you have that side, you're going to come in and do the exact same thing, but going the opposite way. So you're going to start from the seams over here. So again, you'll take your embroidery floss, you'll loop it through your little tool here, safety pin, paper clip, whatever you have at hand. And then we're going to kind of guide this through and meet back again out the other side. And we're just shuffling it along here. Shuffling it along. And then once you get to the other side, you'll just gently pull that through. And then you'll take one end and pull the rest of it through. And there we are. That's the other side done. And so again, we'll kind of come over here, match up the ends. And we'll tie another knot. And if you wanted to, you could like thread some beads or charms onto the end of these. Embellish as you like. But I like to just keep it simple. We're just doing a little knot. Just doing a little knot over here. And there you have it. That is how you make a little drawstring pouch. So I'll go ahead and I've got my other guys all set up here. So I'll meet you back here after I have done threaded all of these guys through. And here we are, friends. They're all threaded through and everyone's got drawstrings, and now it's time to, the last step is putting the decks in the bag. So here we have this guy, who gets this lovely bag, and it turned out that this tarot bag is, it's the same size as a standard size, and it turns out it fits that pretty well. And so here we go. Whoop! There's one and done. The next one, I did end up taking this, taking in the bottom a little bit to making it a little bit shorter. It used to be this size, so I just took about half an inch up, and it's a perfect fit for this one. And I replaced, I did a bright pink tassel there, and so I think that's a great fit for this one. What do you guys think? So that's number 2 gets a new home. There we are. And then next up we have this one, and I went for this kind of dusky pink and teal because it's a match for this deck, and I think it turned out to be like a really excellent match. I'm really pleased with this one. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. So there we have number 3 done and dusted. And then here we go. This is the pouch that you guys saw me sew. And this one is for our Graven Images Oracle. So I think it's a great little. I like the pattern. I like the pattern a lot. I like how it turned out. And there we are. That fits nicely there. And then lastly, we have this big round pouch. So it turned out to be a little bit of a square, but I think it'll work really nicely. Yeah, I think the colors go well, and the sort of batik kind of goes well, and it turned out to be a pretty good fit. I like that. I like that a lot. So thank you for, I know this was a bit of a journey. Thanks for sticking around if you're still here. Let me know if you have any questions about the process, and I'll try and answer as best I can. I'll leave some of the dimensions for the pouches down below in the description. And thanks for coming along today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.